Hi, welcome to our Energy, Sustainability and ESG, Environmental, Social Value and Governance stage. We all are aware that the use of renewable will affect the future of the energy mix. Energy demand is coupling, and in the decades ahead, it will become even more pronounced. There are clear opportunities ESG provides, and this can assist projects teams to take advantage of the ESG framework that will operate across the organization. ESG assists organizations to manage the associated risk and implement an appropriate strategy for investors. So, good afternoon, Dr. Jolly. So, you are the Deputy Director and Head of Project Future and the Infrastructure and Project Authority. And Steve Gladman, uh, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. You are the founder of Women Powering Smart Energy Movement. So thank you both for joining us today. And should we have a start? I would like to hear more about your personal stories. So should I start with you, Dr. Joe Jolly? I'm curious to hear why you have taken on your new challenge with the IPA.
Thanks, Estelle, and hello to everybody. What a joy, genuine joy it is to be here talking on International Women's Day with you. Yeah, the reason I applied for the job and incredibly thrilled and privileged to get the job was because how much it aligns to my personal and professional values. And what I came to realise over the quite a few years now is what a life well lived will look and feel like for me. And so for me, I will feel that I've lived the best life I can, that I've done my best to make the biggest difference I can for the planet and everything that inhabits it through the work I do, through project delivery. And the reason there's a huge untapped, unimagined limit of the potential we can make a difference through project delivery is that the climate emergency is a systemic problem. So it needs a systemic solution. And I can't think of anything more systemic than project delivery. And actually, I know that there's so much we can be doing that doesn't depend on the government of the day, or we need a policy, or we need more funding. There is so much we can do as project delivery professionals through the work we do, just through the choices we make every single day. But I'll give you an example about why or evidence for how that is not happening right now. So the Institution of Civil Engineers ran a survey a couple of years ago saying what makes good design in projects. And one of the questions was, what's the blockers to including greenhouse gas emission reduction and climate adaptation in your designs? And one of the main reasons was it's not part of the project brief. And I remember when I read that, I just thought, oh God, when did this happen? When did we sleepwalk into this state of learned helplessness that we have to be told to do the right thing? But the great news with that is we can make a choice to do something different. And I'll very happily talk about how we've done that at actually the Environment Agency, where I worked for 15 years in the delivery of the Flood Risk Capital Programme, and how we are genuinely putting this into practice. This isn't some idea, some just fancy dream. It's practical, it's real, and we're making a difference. And I'll just make one more point before I hand back to you, Estelle, if that's okay. When I applied for the job, my fantastic director, Helen Campbell, an absolute exemplar in leadership, in providing psychological safety and inspiration on a daily basis. When I asked her about the job, I said, what's this job really all about, Helen? And she said, Jo, we've got enough plans and roadmaps. This is about delivery. This is about making things happen on the ground, and not just pilots. I hate to say it, but pilots are quite easy, aren't they? This is about getting transformational change in project delivery as business as usual across the whole of the UK. But also, why not do it globally? So we're on this fantastic panel today globally. What a community we've got. Imagine if we galvanise this community to make the best difference we can through every single project that we deliver for delivering against the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we galvanise that community to do that. So then why don't we, as a collective community, submit a bid for an Earthshot prize in 2025 because of the difference we've made for the planet through the work we do? And that's why I applied for this job, to be head of Project Futures in the centre of government, driving and leading, and I hope inspiring and enabling this change. And I will do my best. That's all I can say, is I'll do my best. Thank you.
So thank you, Joe. You certainly inspired, I think, a lot of engineers out there and non-engineers as well to look through different ways of how we can make this happen. So, Steve, I've got another question for you. So, my question will be, when did you get the idea of creating that platform to empower women? How did that come to you? What inspired you?
Well, I'm very glad you asked me that question, Estelle, because it's the only answer I've got for you. Back in 2017, I noticed on LinkedIn, having been working in the renewable energy industry since around 2010, I noticed a woman being castigated by men for daring to suggest that renewable energy conferences could do with having a few more women on panels and speaking, rather than just being a token gesture, and quite often as moderators, no offense. And I didn't like that. I didn't know her. Her name is Ulrika Weising. She's now Senior Vice President of Valurec. At the time, she was working for Macquarie. So I sort of stepped in, and I wasn't speaking on her behalf, but I said, as a man, I find your comments offensive to the men that were castigating her. And, long story short, from that, I thought actually men should be doing more to enable women in, specifically, I was thinking the renewable energy sector, to have their voices heard, because I know, and I knew at the time, there were a plethora of brilliant women. And the brilliant women numbers were equal to the mediocre men. However, the mediocre men were the ones dominating all the trade conferences, all the stages, espousing the same stuff. It was always the same guys in grey suits saying the same thing, but they always seemed to be on every panel, whether it was in Europe or in the UK. So I thought something needs to be done. I will do something. I then created Women Powering Smart Energy as a way of allowing women to network with each other. So I would have C-level women mixing with interns and women that have just started out, but they were engineers, they were lawyers, they were financiers, they were project managers, and that worked really well. And then I thought, on top of that, allowing women to broaden their own network was to put on some conferences and forums and events which would allow women the stage, and I might throw in a token man every now and again. But predominantly, I wanted to see some women having the opportunity to say what they wanted to say. There was a gender pay gap, there's a gender healthcare gap, and there was a gender interest and dynamism gap in conferences. So I thought, let's do something about that. When I've had these events, the positivity, the energy that is generated in the room from with the audience, from the speakers that I've managed to persuade to stand up and talk, has been absolutely fantastic. So really, it was a way of putting righting a wrong that I saw. It became something bigger than that. The speakers I now have that are always willing to speak, and nobody makes any money out of what I do. I don't get paid. I do it all for free because it's important to do it. The women that speak don't get paid, or the men that speak sometimes don't get paid. They do it because they also feel it's important. And the new ideas coming out of those meetings and conferences are incredible, absolutely incredible. And I still can't understand why big event companies don't include more women in their agendas and their conferences. You should come to one, Estelle, actually. Oh, no, you've been there. You've spoken, I know.
Yeah, I was about to say I had the opportunity to be invited. So that was fantastic. And thank you ever so much for that. And that's why I think it's important to highlight the fact that there are those sorts of platforms out there for women, and we're having our allies and supporters as well. So thank you ever so much, Joe and Steve. I would like, well, maybe if we would like now to call Christina Skafarova. She is the ESG lead on Sizewell C. So, hi, Christina. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
Yeah, well, thank you again. Well, I will leave you now to the stage because I understood that you wanted to give us a bit more understanding what ESG means and how this can be applied. So, Christina, that's your time now.
Thank you, Estelle. There are my slides. So the next slide has a little bit of agenda because we have, I think, 15 minutes and some time for Q&A. So first, I'm going to introduce myself and ESG and what it means to be a sustainability professional and how I got there. And then on the second part of the presentation, I'll talk a little bit about Sizewell C, which is a new nuclear power plant project. And lots of people wonder how sustainability professional ends up with working on a nuclear power plant. I don't know why, but I'm going to explain why I think it makes sense. I don't know why people are asking and wondering. And then we can talk about a little bit more diversity and inclusion and what it means for particularly for Sizewell or for big projects. Can we move to the next slide? So I don't know how well you can see this picture, but this is, I'm in construction infrastructure industry for about 15 years. I'm a civil engineer. It's my background, never really done it, studied building sustainability and wondered why are not all buildings built sustainably? Why do we need to generate waste? Why do we need to use so much energy? There are methods and there are ways how we can build sustainably. Why we're not doing it? So I moved to London and started to work for an engineering consultancy and had privilege to work on some great projects. I think this particular photo is taken at Crossrail, and I at some point I did notice that I'm the only woman in the room, and very often I was only woman who was not British in the room, and it took me a while to be able to start saying my opinion in this type of forum. And I absolutely loved infrastructure projects, large projects, because I think something Joe said resonated with me. Making things happen was something, and delivering was something that was always really important to me and really interesting for me. So I started to look at, apart from environmental sustainability, a little bit on the social element. And then I went to work for US government, for the US Department of Commerce on environmental and climate, because another thing that Joe said was that how come things like sustainability and looking how to work on projects more sustainably is not in the project brief. I didn't understand it, so I wanted to go to the source when the decisions are made on big projects, and I think that was a good place. I think I have a bit better understanding, so I moved back into kind of semi-private sector. Now, how to change things? I will say one more kind of example from life before I'm moving onto the more professional side of things. And I have a friend. His name is Michael, and he is a white middle-aged male British. He works in. He's a scientist. He works on cancer research. He's brilliant. He had some breakthroughs, and he works in a big pharma company. And there, he was unfortunate enough that there was an internal conference. It's a global organization, and they had on that conference, someone went into the trouble of counting how many Michaels are there, and they found out there were more Michaels than women at that conference. And from that day, Michael's life became a lot more difficult, because the targets that that organization set for them as a result was we will hire more women and we will bring more women into leadership position as of tomorrow. And as a result of that, obviously, because this organization didn't work for years on making sure that the women are given the opportunities to raise to the position, that they don't have enough talent coming through the recruitment system, it means that they started to promote women with less experience and possibly with less skills because of this this approach. And I always think about it when we're setting up our targets or ways how we're going to deliver on gender parity, for example. And we need to be very careful not to slip into that trap and lose some amazing Michaels, for example. Okay, can we move to the next slide? So I promised also I'll explain what is ESG, environmental, social, governance. ESG is sustainability is a broad term that means different things to different organizations. ESG brings it home for organizations and enable them to measure it and to focus really on the areas which are material for that particular organization or a project. For Sizewell C, I will talk about what's important for us, but Sizewell C, as I mentioned, is a new nuclear power station that will be built on the Suffolk coast, and it is fundamentally sustainable project. I believe that there is not much more we can do to ensure stability of electricity supply. I do support renewables very much, and I would be as excited working for a large renewable company as I am working for Sizewell C, because I believe they all are important in the energy mix. What is exciting about every large project is that although there is an impact, there is lots of opportunity how to minimize that impact. And there is also incredible opportunity to support jobs and bring a certain part of the country, all the world, into kind of better socioeconomic conditions. Can we go to the next slide, please? I don't think I need to explain what are UN Sustainable Development Goals. I think there were a few videos just before this session. But there are 17 of them, and we at some point we just went and started to look towards which we contribute as Sizewell C, and I think we found home for all of them. But that's not what I wanted to do when we started to set up our ESG strategy. What I wanted to do is to look at what are really our key items. What is our North Star? What we want to achieve as a project? Number one, affordable and clean energy. So that's goal number 7. Decent work and economic growth for Suffolk and the UK as well is incredibly important, and it's part of the DNA. The vision of the project is doing the power of good for Britain, and that's not just the clean energy. It's also the jobs and skills. And next one is in industry, innovation, and infrastructure. That's quite exciting. That what more can we do? What additional stuff? How can we bring the humanity step forward on living a better life and in harmony with our planet? The next one, reduced inequalities, and this is what this conference is about. I know there's number 5, but I feel that number 10 is really important, and it's all about equity. And really enjoyed a little video just before this session with the boxes and making sure that we reduce inequalities around us. And life on land is my favorite, because I do like to spend time outside, and I live in a very small village, and surrounded by woods and fields and wildlife, and I think it's just so important to preserve it. And I love that the project I work on is focusing on this element as well. If we move to the next slide, I'll quickly go through those and mention ESG. Maybe you're wondering where this ESG come from, where sustainability come from, why now there is regenerative leadership is another bit. The sustainable is not enough. We need to regenerate. We need to fix what we broke, and so it might be worthwhile spending a little time on saying why is ESG, why we chose ESG, and it's driven by investors. So it came from financing institutions, and I think it's a good thing, because where the money goes, it means that there is attention, when there is a risk and it's realized what that means if we don't do something well, then it means that people, the important people, pay attention and do something about it and start looking at investments. So affordable and clean energy is one of the key goals, and it's the environmental one, is your E in the ESG. And it ties well, apart from looking at our life cycle cost. So this is the cost of carbon throughout the lifetime of the plant. We are doing pretty well compared to any other technologies. As I said, renewables are our partners, and we want to supplement their boom. But we do want to displace coal and gas from our grid. And you see here on this slide that we have a good reason to build nuclear power stations instead of gas and coal power stations. Can we go on the next slide? This slide is about so this goal number 9, and decent work and economic growth. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, because you can imagine if we are creating 70,000 jobs, we have incredible opportunity, but at the same time we have big challenge, and the challenge is that we don't have those people in the UK currently in the demographic that is traditionally working on those types of jobs. So that's where comes diversity and inclusion. If we want to attract the best talent, and we will need many people, it's really struggle to recruit in these times. If we want the best talent, and we're looking at this narrow pool of applicants, of potential people to a potential workforce, we are missing out on incredible amount of people. If we only been able to have the workforce reflecting the demographic of the UK, of the country where we live, or elsewhere where we operate, or where we have supply chains, sorry, not operate, that would be amazing, because we wouldn't need to worry about skills. We would have them all. We would have the talent that we need. And we're doing lots of things to develop this talent in the country. Can we go to the next slide, please? This is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And I just put it here because I love it, because I'm a little bit, I said I'm an engineer, I'm a little bit geek. So we're using some smart people realize there is lots of process heat that comes out of nuclear power station and can be used for many things. And this is the cheapest low carbon heat that there exists. And we're having lots of trials and projects how to utilize this waste heat. And if you're interested, you can find more on website, or you just contact me. I love talking about these things. However, I want to focus on the next slide for the remaining time we have, and it is because this conference is about equity, and we want to make sure that there are equal opportunities. So again, not everyone's equal, but we want to make sure there are equal opportunities. So we did sign up to the nuclear industry targets of 40% women in nuclear. We did our another of our targets is 50% women apprenticeships in our schemes. We're looking at 40% female management, and we're looking at our executive directors, independent executives, non-executive directors as well targets. And we kind of took the first step. You just need to think about us as a startup, because we only achieved something which we call government investment decision in November last year. So we are really being just set up, and we're going to go through the capital raise process where for the next 12 months or so to be able to even start the project properly. So you need to bear with us. But we did start in the right foot. So we're going to have announcement. Hopefully, I'm not saying something I'm not supposed to, but as of April, we're going to have 2 managing directors. One of them is women, one of them is men. So that's a great start. And I think from the top, it needs to go all the way down. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're setting ourselves up. So although we have these overall targets, we're not going to our supply chain and say, you can work with us, but in the contract, we're going to set that you're going to employ apprenticeship. You're going to have some apprenticeships within your contract, working on your contract, and 50% of them needs to be female. We will never do that. So we avoid the Michael situation from the beginning, that we lose some good candidates. What we are saying, what we need to do to be able for our supply chain to hire the way we want is that we should create the pool of applicants and support the people, the students, they coming out of educations, and make sure that they receive the equal number of applications from men and women and from minority backgrounds. So we do not focus only on gender balance, but we have other targets as well. So I think this is incredibly important to get that right. The project is going to be in construction 10, 12 years. So we have some good time. We have some of the people that are going to be working on the project and delivering it are now in primary, secondary school. So we do have lots of outreach to schools. We partner with charities. We look at everything else you probably heard earlier today as well on STEM programs and how to support them. I think very important is role models, to see someone like myself when I was a student achieving things in engineering field, talking about how much fun it is to do work on projects. How interesting and how you can one day go and say, yes, I worked on this, or go on the underground line, which you wouldn't have had certain features if it wasn't for you working on the project, and talk about it with children and students. I think it's incredibly powerful for them. So we have, so apart from talking to students and preparing those, we also need to make sure that the environment and the culture within the organization is inclusive. And we have some wonderful networks which are formed as we have, I think, 6 for the minute. We have, apart from Gender Balance Network, we have Race for Equality Network, Mental Health, Military, disabilities carers and parents, and these groups get together, create content for our lunch and learns, and they form little communities which are incredibly supportive and powerful, and you have always someone to talk to if you feel like we just want to make sure there is no one who feels other, and that have some platform and place where they can talk and can say what we could do better. And again, we are setting up, so we're using these networks and people who sit on those networks to help us shape our policies and procedures. And also, we're looking at the design of many things that we're setting up, particularly on site operations, to make sure that we're including what we need to include to be inclusive. This is what a sentence. So we will also, apart from, so I think supply chain is something I wanted to touch upon as well. And as project managers, you will deal with that a lot, and how to set the right targets for the supply chain, how to make sure that you don't create barriers for smaller suppliers, and that you not getting just a lip service from the big ones. I think it's all, you need to put lots of things in the contracts to make it happen, at least nowadays. But also the best way we see is to work with the supply chain. We are fortunate with setting ourselves up so we can have these discussions We can talk to big suppliers and the smaller suppliers as well. So I think collaboration, it's key to achieve what you want to achieve. Be transparent about what is your North Star, where you want to get, and have the supply chain work with you on getting there is incredibly important. And also the things I was saying at the beginning of enabling and making sure that they can deliver by investing in activities such as STEM programs and supporting more women into engineering roles. I'm sure I forgot quite a few things on the what we're doing on the equal opportunities, because there is quite a long list. I can share that those are more kind of practical and specific steps, where if we don't get the concept right in the first place, that would then that's all for nothing. So I prefer to speak about that. And I think I have one more slide, which is I talked about life on land and enhanced biodiversity. So if you do go to Suffolk, where we're building Sizewell C, we've already spent last 5 years to creating new habitats for wildlife, and it's quite amazing what can happen in 5 years when you put yourself in rewilding projects. And we can create apprenticeship places, and lots of women really enjoy actually working outside and contributing to creating new environment and new also areas for tourism. So I wanted to plug this one in at the end, as it's in line with the last UN SDG. So thank you very much. I think we can take some questions, but I think we might move back into the panel if I'm not.
Yes, thank you very much, Christina. That was fantastic. Hi, I'm Esther Gordon-Smith. I am one of the PMIs, the Project Management Institute Sustainability Community of Action volunteers. So I'm helping run the tech for this event, my first one. It's going well so far. And now we are moving back into a panel discussion. So I'm going to bring back all the speakers that we had before. And I am going to ask some questions. I'm clicking on the unmute mic button for people, and it's not unmuting your mics. So Steve and Joe, you may need to unmute yourself. Perfect. Thank you very much. Cool. So question number one, I've been looking at the comments in the chat, and Christina, we're going to give you a little bit of a break because you've been talking for a while. Grab a sip of water if you'd like one. We've got a question about from Yolanda about how can we build networks of people talking. So Yolanda was picking up on a point that was made previously around how women often hear that we need to rise up and speak up. How can we work together to build a network of like-minded women? Steve, maybe if you'd like to start with a little bit more about how your network has been going, and then if anybody else had any points, if you wave your hand.
Sure. How to build a network is relatively easy if your purpose of that network is clear. And I think women understand that, there are lots of networks in the UK. I mean, Powerful Women is probably the largest, but I always find it a little elitist. I think really what you've got to do is look at the grassroots as well as the top. You've got to involve everybody in it, from whatever industry is associated to your particular industry sector, in this case probably energy. But I think you do need men, because I think women talking to women about the issues they have is great, and it changes a lot. But somehow or other, you need to make men empowered to fight that fight for you as well. because then, more men get involved, more men understand, and men aren't very good at understanding things like this. It's a difficult one, but, building a network at work is probably the best way. I did it outside of work, and I'm bringing people in from different companies and different areas of work. But if you started with a group within your own company, you might then pull in a lot of the men that are there that are allies privately but don't publicly tell you that. It's from small acorns, etc. So I would just start doing it, just getting like-minded people involved, get a little cooperative going, and spread it out more. I mean, I've been successful with Women Power and Smart Energy because I've involved other women, not other women because I'm a man. I've involved women I've involved them in arranging the things I do, and a lot of them are unsung heroes, but absolutely I rely on them to help me do it. It's not all down to me.
Cool. No, thanks so much, Steve. And sort of picking up on the second part of the question as well, certainly in my experience, I've seen sort of communities start to get going around, one or two passionate people who are driven to do it. But it often seems like then if they, get worn out, it's not always very sustainable and things don't always continue. So I wonder, Joe, if anybody in the group had any insights about how do you get these things to grow organically, as Yolanda suggests. Joe, was that a...
It was. So I don't think there's a magic answer, is there? And the fact that we're having the discussion is great. And I couldn't agree more. It's about this, it's us, it's we that will make the changes, isn't it? Sort of bad news, the cavalry isn't coming. There's no one going to swoop in and fix everything. It's us, it's we. And I also genuinely believe there's nothing... I need to be careful, not there's nothing stopping us. Clearly, there's things that limit everything that we're talking about in this session. But look at look at what people are doing because they simply choose to. Look at what Steve has set up. Look at what Christina's leading, and Estelle, and you, Esther, with your group. So there's so much we can do. And also, as you know, Esther, my guilty pleasure in the world of project data analytics. I think, so when we talk about data analytics, it can sound quite sort of techie and it's all about dashboards and gathering performance data. Sure, there's an element of that. But what I'm really advocating in data analytics and really wanting to bring far more front and center into project delivery is how those things can be used to connect people. I mean, we've all got one of these in our hands, haven't we? Sorry, you can't see my background. A smartphone. We're connected through LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, whatever. And yet I come to project delivery and I don't know who's doing anything on benefits management or equality or sustainability. And yet the reality is, tragically, just here in the UK, there's at least 5 groups working on productivity. And I love the irony because it's so very unproductive. Now, imagine if we had it, so using graph databases, using data analytics, we could start to populate a graph database. Again, through scraping the web, it automatically updates itself. This is a huge amount of fantastic things that the Project Data Analytics Task Force is pioneering. And then you can simply go and search it. Who's doing something on this? And it can be global, can't it? And in that way, we start to find our champions, our allies, our mentors, our inspiration. I just saw in the chat, someone wanted to reach out to Christina to say, how did you do that? And again, so talking is one fantastic forum, and thank goodness we have these virtual events more and more now. A silver lining from the grimmest of times. But let's really champion the use of data analytics in connecting people and in understanding how people feel, because whilst we measure time, cost, and quality on projects, it doesn't give us all that insight about how teams are feeling. Are they feeling psychologically safe? Are they collaborating? Are they trusting each other? Because that's what makes great projects. And actually, we can measure this. We can get real insights on it from data and analytics. And again, these are the things I am piloting from the IPA, because I want to lead a transformation in valuing so much more, everything we're talking about, to enable the most fantastic and life-enhancing project delivery. Thank you.
Can I just come in on this one?
Please do, Christina.
Because it's key. It's so important what Joe just said about data. And so Sizewell C is a replication of another project called Hinkley Point C, which is on the other side of the UK. And when that project was set up, ESG or sustainability, it was important, but that was not key. And also the way the financial structure of that project of ours is different. So now it is more important to set it up from the start. And looking at Hinkley and how organically lots of things happen, quite a few in silos. They're amazing things, amazing achievements with no money, not really many people on the project, focusing on this area from the start. But the problem is that they are not really captured and the people not really working together. So we're trying to do that now. We're trying to set up the boring processes and procedures and the networks and how everything works together. I think the communication and the technology we have, we need to make sure we don't get overwhelmed by it and confused, and then it can be counterproductive. But how to do it efficiently, and then collating the data and measuring what we have done, because we're doing lots of things that haven't been done before in this, especially on the social value and social area. How what we've done now is going to impact things in 5 years down the line. How can we measure it effectively? How can we make sure that it's been the right thing if we don't measure it? I think there are a few challenges, and I'd like this forum to think about how to do it more. As some of this data we can collate, but some of this data people don't feel comfortable disclosing. So we can't always measure. If someone has, for example, mental health issues and they don't feel like their employers should know about it, that's a big barrier, because we cannot then say, yeah, we are helping the right way or the wrong way, what we're doing. So I think how to encourage this disclosure, smart ways how to work with data and build trust. So just wanted to do that.
Cool. Thank you very much, Christina. Estelle, I was wondering if we could pick up on some of these themes and talk a little bit about ESG and risk management. And so I know that you work in the project management sector a lot. You're part of the PMI. How can we look at some of these risks of ESG elements not being achieved? Is that something that you're aware of approach with data or with collaboration?
Well, to pick up on the data bit first, in my world, data are very important. So obviously, we are looking for information in relation to how the project has looked at the risk profile in relation to the environmental aspect, and obviously social value that now, again, as today, we trying to advertise, and obviously in the governance aspect. So and this is especially in relation to the investors. I would like to specifically highlight some point in relation to social value, especially this event is being managed by volunteered and put together by volunteers. So we have 70 volunteers that put this event together, and 15 PMI chapters around the world in different time zones. So it has been such of a challenge. And together we raise over 2,000 hours, to get this event. So imagine, so all those data can be part of that social value that we're bringing on. And again, we were talking about that community. Well, you mentioned, sustainability community of action, which is very important in relation to the sustainability aspect. But here, as a volunteer, what we want is we're looking at the hours of impact, bringing value, adding value as well to the project, but also querying how the supply chain can be involved. And I think this is a common theme that has been throughout the day, is involving more the supply chain and understanding how basically we can deliver better and more successfully our project, involving people at the core, really.
Yeah, thank you, Estelle. And I think so. I work in the construction sector, and I think that's some of what I've found as we've been looking at social value in our company as well. Is a lot of our suppliers were already doing volunteer days. There were pockets, like as you say, Christina, at Sizewell, there's been some really good pockets of excellent stuff happening, but we haven't always collected that and known what's happening there. And so some of the data we could start to capture is just where we're doing great stuff. And assigning that to social value, and we found that really exciting where I work. Suddenly you realise there's loads going on. We're going to move on to a more a different sort of question, so not about the concepts of project management. Christina, this one's coming your way as a starting point. One of the questions whilst you're giving your presentation was about techniques for speaking out. So the question was, can you share your techniques that helped you speaking out, being the only woman in the room? And what were some of your motivators? Christina, over to you.
So to start with, I didn't just, I just didn't know. I was just sitting there and thinking, oh, I don't know this, I should ask it. And then someone next to me asked the questions like, oh, I should have asked. I'm not the only one who didn't know. And over time you realize, actually, I know a little bit more than you. So, and what you're saying doesn't make any sense. So that usually is kind of key to once you, I think it's the experience a little bit longer, but I think there is so my personal hero. I would be surprised if her name doesn't come up today. Is Madeleine Albright, who comes from the Czech Republic and had to escape war, moved to London, then moved to the United States and became Secretary of State. Before that, she had a family, made coffee in the White House, and then ended a war in another country. So that's having someone like that as an inspiration. And what she said, one of her quotes is, it took me a long time to find my voice, and I'm going to probably butcher it. But now that I found it, I'm not going to shut up, I think, or I'm not going to be silent, maybe she said. This remembering this, once you realize, okay, I said something, it's okay not to know. It's okay to ask a question. I'm going to say my expertise. I'm confident in what I'm doing. If you know more, that's great. I'm going to learn. If you don't, then it's going to be valued. And my voice has as much value as everyone else's voice. I think this is really important to realize. I can't call it a technique. I just say there will be people who want to ask the same question as you do, for sure.
Absolutely.
So just ask it first.
I remember this amazing point in one of the companies I worked for early in my career. They ran a women's development course. And I'll see if I can find the reference to the company that ran it and put it in the chat. It was so good. But we did that, like walking the process through. What's the worst that's going to happen if I say something and it's not quite right? Okay, could I start with a small thing? Okay, I survived doing a small thing. What's the worst that could happen if I said something a bit bigger? Oh, I've survived that too. And other people in the room will start to respond as well. Of course, the biggest issue with they ran this women's development course, and it was clear the company wasn't going to change. So all their best talented women realized they could do better and left.
Well, that's
that isn't saying don't do women's development courses. That's saying when you do empower your women to ask what they want, make sure that you're willing to negotiate. But anyway, different story. Steve, I saw that you had your hand up. What would be your take on helping women, minorities, other people to speak out in the room?
Well, I would suggest that you've got to keep in the back of your mind that I think always women at the top and who are getting there are always brilliant. And they've always made sacrifices to get there. Whatever those sacrifices are, they've changed something in their lives to get there. The men at the top are often mediocre and they've probably made little sacrifice, if any, to get where they are. When you ask a question, a man will put his hand up and he'll give an answer. And even if the answer is complete nonsense, he has an ego which allows him to feel confident in doing that. So just bear in mind that nobody in that room is better than you, that your opinion, your view, your question is absolutely valid, and nobody can knock you for that. And those that do, ignore them because they're, I was going to say something rude then.
Say it, Steve, say it.
If I say beep, whatever the word was.
But just remember, I've been in the room in meetings, so many meetings, and there have been so many brilliant people in that meeting that happen to be women, but they've probably not said what they wanted to say. And I know how men can be dismissive. I know how they can ignore, but it's their own failing. It's not anybody else's. It's their own problem. And a lot of the time they feel insecure in their knowledge, and especially when a woman will ask a brilliant question or give a brilliant answer, and they almost feel they're belittled by it. So there's a lot of politicking going on in meetings. So I would say, like Christina says, just say what you want and don't ever feel worried to do that.
Joe, say what you want.
Yeah, or one thing I want to say is, with people like Christina and Steve and you all, what role models, and you saying that makes it okay. You by doing that, by saying it, by walking the walk, you're making okay for everyone else, and you're both a breath of fresh air, and you're open and you're honest and you're brave. And I mean, I've been riddled by self-doubt all my life and very low self-regard, and very happy to share why. I understand the reasons why, but it's a big start, a big step forward, understanding why. But my goodness, working through finding the sort of strategies in life that work for me, is a lifelong journey. But I'm again, if anyone wants to contact me, my experience will be totally different to anyone else's, and what works for me won't work necessarily for anyone else. But I think, again, just to hear that you're not alone, that these things are normal. I just heard, you hear the most fantastic inspirational people say they feel imposter syndrome, and you think, my goodness, how can that be, that you don't feel that you belong in these extraordinary roles that you're in? And sorry, two things I just wanted to mention practically that make a difference for me, or have made a difference. Many, 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 but two that spring to mind. One is I read, I think it might have been on LinkedIn or something recently. And the thing I find is, so whilst I do feel self-doubt and fear and all of these things, the purpose of my work and what I want to make a difference in is bigger than my fears. So it's more important than my fears. So there was some phrase about, I can't remember the first bit, but it was something about, it was something about who are you saying it for? Who are you saying this for? And actually, I can say it for the planet and the environment more than I can say it for me. And hey, I'm okay with that. I think a lot of this is about just acceptance and saying, I'm not a bad person because I feel fear. And just because I feel fear, it doesn't mean I'm not brave. It just means I'm probably pretty human. The other thing is, actually, there's amazing tools and techniques. And if you, again, I'd happily share these things that I've had the huge fortune to be on some sort of, these sort of personal presence type things. I know it can sound a bit cheesy, but actually, just sitting square, the time and space that you occupy gives you status. So how you introduce yourself. Hello, I'm Jo Jolly, and I'm the head of Project Futures at the Infrastructure and Projects Authority. Or, no, I'm Jo Jolly, and I'm head of Project Futures at the Infrastructure and Projects Authority. Instantly, I've given myself status, and I'm owning the time and space. And there's a huge thing about fake it till you make it. So if I say that at the start of a meeting, I might be feeling really nervous inside, heart racing, But I say it slowly and clearly, sat up, and already I feel more confident. So if some of those things just help, use them. And if anything more I can share, I am no expert, believe me, but happy to share what I've learned in this funny old journey so far. Hope that helps.
No, brilliant. Thank you so much. We've probably got time for a sort of 30-second soundbite from each of our speakers. And I'm going to give you some options, which could be 30 seconds on if you could wave a magic wand, what would you change in, for example, project management, profession, energy sector? Or it could be if you wanted people to take away one thing from today, what would it be? I'm going to start with mine to give people time to think. Mine is just everyone on the call. Like, we can be the people who change things. You don't need to ask to wait for anyone to give you permission to change things. Just grab it with both hands, go for it. The worst people can say is no is one of the most powerful pieces of advice I've ever received. Okay, who's going next? Steve?
Steve. Oh my God. I haven't had 2 days to think about this.
Neither have I.
Be creative, be collaborative, be confident, and you can do whatever you want to do. Just don't worry about it. All the important things you want to change, do something, whether it's small steps, big steps, but just go for it. Because, you know, the world is a really fast changing place, and old ways aren't fit for purpose anymore. And new ideas and new ways of thinking and being creative and looking with a bit of foresight to the future. That's more than 30 seconds. Sorry, yes.
Brilliant. No, thank you. Christina, any closing remarks?
What I will go for what I wish for, for projects and construction and nuclear sector and infrastructure in general and the society. I wish that overnight the barriers for women were lifted. Things like we have all of us affordable childcare and we can rely on, we can trust. Things like there is access to things that and we have balanced life. We don't need to feel guilty going to work and not spending time with family. That we have access to education and we can pursue the career, and that we are not shut down by someone who feels that women shouldn't be learning mathematics, for example, which still happens these days. So that's what we might wish for the future.
I all wish
for tomorrow.
We had that wand. Joe Jolly.
Oh, what a panel I'm on. I don't want this to end. It's amazing. Sorry, everyone else. But yeah, the thing that sprung to, I mean, you know, to add rather than repeat, because it's beautiful what you both said. One thing I've been reflecting a lot on lately, I mean, we so undervalue, don't we, although, you know, I'm seeing the green shoots of this changing about compassion and kindness in leadership. I've always felt it was a weakness. How awful, isn't it? You know, a bit ashamed that, I'm not banging the table and being a bit... And again, you know, it's taken me 50 years to get to the point where I think, you know, I'm okay with that. This is how I choose to lead. And honestly, I think it's one of the few leadership qualities that actually has any bearing or any relevance now, these days. And something that the fabulous Crystal Moore, who I work with, brilliant coach and, you know, project delivery professional, and she introduced me to this model called BANI. So we might have heard of VUCA. You know, we talked about it a lot through the pandemic, this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. But a model, it's actually been developed quite a few years ago now, a short number of years ago, but VUCA is about 30 odd years old. So BANI has been developed in more recent years, and it describes brittleness. So things that seem firm suddenly break. Anxiety, non-linearity, things suddenly change, and incomprehensibility. So it talks about a world that is no longer complex, it's incomprehensible. And I'd agree, it's changing exponentially. And the antidote to Banny, the things we can focus on, it's about mindfulness, resilience, it's about empathy and emotional intelligence. These are the things that help us survive and thrive in this world. So now is the time for compassionate leadership. And although I still have self-doubt, and I probably will forevermore, I'm feeling more okay about who I am. So again, if that helps at all, then it was worth sharing.
Thank you so much. We're going to hand over to Estelle now to bring us to a close.
So again, thank you very much, Esther, and everyone on this panel. So this has been an amazing discussion. So for me, to close, I wanted to say, well, following the last point is, well, create your safe space and grow outside your comfort zone. So I think that's quite important, and use your voice through those different meetings and with your friends, family, and outside in your network. So now you are invited to join the sessions, which are managed by the wide range of PMI chapters and partners. So make the most of the conference as always, continue working, go to our quiz and participate in the session throughout the rest of the day. We just need to ask you, well, what is your key takeaway in each session? So we will be sharing, as you know, our survey at the end of the day, so where we want to hear about your feedback. So thank you very much, everyone, and I shall see you later tonight at 17:20 for our global event. Thank you very much.